Welcome to our channel with new interesting episode. On November 20th, 1966, NASA's Lunar Orbiter 2 captured a photograph of something mysterious on the Moon, sparking curiosity and speculation. While the Moon landing was one of humanity's greatest accomplishments, not every detail made it into the history books. Strange occurrences, eerie sounds, and even near disasters have been left out of public knowledge. In May 1969, Apollo 10 astronauts reported hearing unexplained whistling noises from deep space. Their conversation about the sound was recorded, but it remains unclear what caused it. Additionally, there was a speech prepared for a tragedy that almost happened, which has rarely been discussed. Many secrets about the Apollo missions have been hidden from the public. Here are some of the most shocking and chilling details that NASA has never openly shared. During the intense space race, an unexpected proposal could have changed history. President John F. Kennedy suggested a joint U.S.-Soviet mission to the Moon. The idea of these two rival superpowers working together on such a massive project was unimaginable at the time. Kennedy believed that the U.S. could benefit from Soviet expertise, as they had already accomplished major milestones in space exploration, such as sending the first human into orbit. However, this proposal never materialized due to a series of tragic events, including Kennedy's assassination. The Cold War tensions between the two nations were too great to overcome, and each country continued its own efforts in space exploration. It is fascinating to think about how history might have been different if the two nations had cooperated instead of competing. Could they have built a lasting alliance in space? Or would their political differences have caused more problems? The idea remains one of the greatest what-ifs of the space race. Another hidden fact involves a speech that President Richard Nixon never had to give. As the Apollo 11 mission prepared to make history, a backup speech was written in case Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin did not survive. Speechwriter William Safire crafted a chilling message in which Nixon would have announced that the astronauts were forever lost on the Moon. The speech began with the haunting words, "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the Moon to explore in peace will stay on the Moon to rest in peace." Thankfully, this tragic scenario never occurred, but the existence of the speech highlights the extreme risks that the astronauts faced. Neil Armstrong, the first man on the Moon, had a close brush with death before ever setting foot on the lunar surface. In 1968, while piloting a lunar landing research vehicle designed to simulate moon landings, Armstrong experienced a terrifying malfunction. At 200 feet above the ground, the machine lost control and crashed in a fiery explosion. Armstrong managed to eject just in time, narrowly escaping death. Had he not reacted quickly, he may not have been alive to make history a year later. In 2007, a man named William Rutledge claimed to be a former NASA official and revealed an astonishing secret. He alleged that Apollo 20, a supposed top-secret mission, was launched to explore the far side of the Moon, where an enormous alien spacecraft had been discovered. According to Rutledge, he and two other astronauts entered the strange vessel and found advanced technology that was far beyond human capability. He even released grainy footage supposedly showing the ship's interior. NASA, however, has completely denied the existence of Apollo 20, dismissing Rutledge's claims as a hoax. But for UFO enthusiasts, his story remains a mystery that fuels endless speculation. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding the moon landing involves missing tapes that may never be recovered. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin took their historic steps on the Moon on July 20, 1969, around 650 million people watched the broadcast. However, the original high-quality recordings made by NASA have vanished. These tapes, which captured the moon landing in superior resolution, were supposed to be archived for historical purposes. Somehow, they disappeared without a trace. Some theorists believe the tapes may have contained hidden details that NASA didn't want the public to see, while others argue that they were simply lost due to mismanagement. Despite years of searching, their whereabouts remain unknown. Another terrifying moment occurred when Apollo 11 was returning to Earth. Mission Control detected an unknown object moving at high speed near the spacecraft, seemingly on a collision course. The crew, exhausted from their journey, was unaware of the danger at first. Just moments before impact, the object suddenly changed direction, barely missing the spacecraft. To this day, the nature of the object remains unknown. Some speculate it was a classified military satellite, while others believe it could have been an extraterrestrial probe. Tensions ran high on some Apollo missions, sometimes threatening their success. Apollo 7, the first crewed flight after the tragic Apollo 1 fire, nearly ended in disaster due to conflicts between the crew and mission control. Astronaut Wally Schirra frequently clashed with ground control over mission procedures, food, and other details. The situation became so tense that some feared a mutiny in space. While the mission successfully proved that the redesigned spacecraft was safe, NASA learned valuable lessons about crew dynamics and stress during spaceflight. The Apollo program also suffered an early tragedy that changed NASA forever. On January 27, 1967, the Apollo 1 crew was conducting a routine pre-launch test when a fire broke out inside the command module. Trapped in a pure oxygen environment, the three astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, had no way to escape and perished in the flames. This devastating loss forced NASA to rethink its safety procedures, leading to crucial design changes in later missions. The Apollo 11 moon landing was nearly cut short due to a fuel crisis. As Armstrong and Aldrin descended toward the lunar surface, an overloaded computer forced Armstrong to take manual control. Searching for a safe landing site consumed precious fuel, and by the time they finally touched down, only about 30 seconds of fuel remained. Had they run out just moments earlier, they would have crashed with no way to return home. Armstrong's skill as a pilot saved the mission, demonstrating how every second counted in space. Apollo 12 also faced a dangerous situation. Just seconds after liftoff on November 14, 1969, the spacecraft was struck by lightning, twice. The electrical surge knocked out power and nearly ended the mission before it even left Earth's atmosphere. Fortunately, flight controller John Aaron quickly figured out a solution, instructing the crew to switch to backup systems. This quick thinking saved the mission and allowed Apollo 12 to continue its journey to the moon. One of the strangest incidents occurred during Apollo 14 when astronaut Edgar Mitchell conducted a secret telepathic experiment. Fascinated by the paranormal, Mitchell attempted to send mental images of symbols to a person back on Earth. Later analysis suggested that the results were statistically significant, meaning there was a possibility that telepathic communication had occurred across space. However, NASA has never officially acknowledged the experiment, leaving it as an intriguing mystery. Another eerie event happened during Apollo 10. As the spacecraft orbited the far side of the moon, the astronauts heard an unexplained, high-pitched whistling sound. It lasted for nearly an hour and was recorded by the spacecraft's instruments. Some theories suggest it was caused by solar wind interacting with the moon's magnetic field, but no conclusive explanation has ever been found. The Apollo missions were filled with remarkable achievements, but also with close calls, unexplained events, and hidden secrets. Some of these incidents were simply the result of the extreme risks involved in space exploration, while others continue to fuel speculation about what NASA might not have disclosed. From missing tapes to unexplained sounds and secret backup speeches, these stories remind us that space travel is not just about science, it is also filled with mystery and the unknown. In November 1969, Apollo 12 astronauts Charles Pete Conrad and Alan Bean landed on the moon, completely unaware that their mission would uncover a baffling mystery. As part of their tasks, they deployed a set of seismometers to measure lunar activity. However, the data they received was completely unexpected. The readings suggested that the moon wasn't a solid rock, as scientists had believed for centuries. Instead, it seemed to behave like a hollow structure, reverberating like a bell when struck by an impact. This shocking discovery led to the controversial hollow moon hypothesis. According to this theory, the moon may not be a naturally formed celestial body but an artificial structure created by an advanced civilization for an unknown purpose. Supporters of this idea argue that the unusual seismic data, combined with the moon's many unexplained anomalies, cannot be explained by natural causes alone. However, skeptics strongly disagree, stating that the seismic activity can be explained by the moon's unique composition and internal structure. Despite this, the debate over whether the moon is hollow continues to intrigue researchers and conspiracy theorists alike. During the Apollo 11 mission, millions of people around the world eagerly watched as the spacecraft re-entered Earth's atmosphere and splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. The world waited anxiously for the first glimpse of the returning astronauts. However, when cameras focused on the recovery site, they showed only an empty ocean. There was no sign of the spacecraft or its crew. For a terrifying moment, it seemed as though something had gone terribly wrong, and the astronauts were lost. Then, breaking through the static, a voice crackled over the radio, "We're okay. We're in the water." A wave of relief swept over mission control and the public as the crew confirmed they were safe. However, something strange happened. The footage of the astronauts emerging from the capsule and being hoisted aboard the recovery helicopter was missing. This missing footage has fueled countless conspiracy theories. Some people believe NASA deliberately hid the video to conceal evidence that the moon landing was faked. Others argue that something unusual happened during the recovery that NASA didn't want the public to see. However, NASA has provided a simple explanation. The rough sea conditions during the recovery caused a technical glitch, preventing the footage from being recorded. Despite this, the missing video remains an enduring mystery, sparking endless speculation about what really happened on that historic day in July 1969. The Apollo 11 landing was one of the most nerve-wracking moments in space exploration. As the lunar module descended toward the moon, the astronauts expected to land in a smooth, flat area. However, as they peered out of the window, they were met with a shocking sight. Instead of a safe landing zone, the surface below was filled with massive boulders and deep craters, some as large as 30 feet deep. Buzz Aldrin quickly checked the onboard computer and made a startling discovery: they had overshot their intended landing site by nearly 4 miles. To make matters worse, the fuel supply was running dangerously low, and the spacecraft's alarms were blaring. With no time to waste, Neil Armstrong took manual control of the lunar module. For several tense minutes, he skillfully maneuvered over the treacherous terrain, searching for a safe place to land. The entire mission depended on his ability to find a clear spot before the fuel ran out. Finally, with only seconds of fuel left, Armstrong spotted a relatively flat patch of ground. Carefully, he brought the module down for a successful landing. The Apollo 11 crew had narrowly escaped disaster, but their challenges were far from over. There are rumors of a secret mission, Apollo 20, that was allegedly launched to explore the far side of the moon. According to these claims, NASA sent 2 astronauts on a top-secret mission to investigate an unknown object on the moon's dark side and possibly make contact with extraterrestrial life. However, the mission reportedly ended in tragedy. Conspiracy theorists claim that contact with the astronauts was lost, and months later, their spacecraft mysteriously returned to Earth. When it was recovered, what was found inside was horrifying. One astronaut was dead, and the other was barely alive. His body was badly mutilated, and his face was unrecognizable. The sight was so disturbing that NASA allegedly covered up the entire event. While these stories sound terrifying, there is no real evidence to support them. Officially, Apollo 20 never happened. However, the legend of the lost mission continues to circulate, leaving people to wonder whether NASA has hidden the truth about what really happened in space. Another near disaster struck Apollo 11 when the lunar module was just 33,500 feet above the moon's surface. Suddenly, the spacecraft's computer began flashing an error code, threatening to abort the mission. The error code, labeled 1202, indicated that the computer was overloaded with data and struggling to process all the incoming information. Inside the module, Armstrong and Aldrin faced a terrifying situation. The lunar surface was rapidly approaching, and they had no time to diagnose the problem. At Mission Control, a young engineer named Steve Bales had to make a critical decision in seconds. After quickly analyzing the situation, he determined that the error could be safely ignored. Thanks to his decision, the mission was able to continue. If Bales had made a different call, the landing could have been aborted, preventing Armstrong and Aldrin from ever stepping onto the moon. This moment demonstrated how even the smallest decisions could have a massive impact on the course of space exploration. After their moonwalk, Armstrong and Aldrin returned to the lunar module, but Mission Control noticed a serious issue. The spacecraft's fuel line, which was essential for powering the ascent engine, showed signs of dangerous pressure buildup. Scientists suspected that the extreme cold on the moon, which can drop to -298°F, had caused a portion of the fuel to freeze. If the blockage didn't clear, it could lead to an explosion during liftoff, potentially leaving the astronauts stranded on the moon. With no way to physically access the fuel line, the astronauts and Mission Control could do nothing but wait. Hours passed as they anxiously monitored the situation. Miraculously, the pressure gradually stabilized, and the mission continued as planned. As the astronauts tried to re-enter the lunar module, they encountered another terrifying problem: the hatch refused to close. A small piece of lunar dust had likely become lodged in the hinge, preventing the door from sealing properly. Oxygen was escaping from the module, and if they couldn't get the hatch closed, they would be trapped on the moon. In a desperate attempt to fix the issue, Buzz Aldrin used a pen to push the hinge mechanism. Finally, the hatch snapped into place, sealing the module and saving their lives. This seemingly small problem could have had fatal consequences, but quick thinking and improvisation allowed the mission to continue. The Apollo 11 astronauts faced yet another challenge when they discovered that a crucial circuit breaker switch had broken off. This switch was responsible for activating the ascent engine, which would allow them to lift off from the moon's surface and return to the command module. Without it, they had no way of leaving the moon. Stranded inside the lunar module, the astronauts had to think fast. Buzz Aldrin came up with a creative solution. He used a felt-tip pen to push the switch back into place. Amazingly, this improvised fix worked, and the engine started as planned. Once again, human ingenuity saved the mission from disaster. After Apollo 11's success, many people expected continued missions to the moon. However, after Apollo 17 in 1972, lunar exploration suddenly stopped. The reason was a combination of budget cuts, shifting priorities, and political factors. The Apollo program was extremely expensive, and with other pressing national issues, continued moon missions were hard to justify. NASA also began focusing on other space projects, such as the Space Shuttle program and planetary exploration. Additionally, the U.S. had already won the space race against the Soviet Union, reducing the urgency to send more missions to the moon. Now, interest in the moon is returning. NASA's Artemis program aims to send astronauts, including the first woman, to the lunar surface by 2027. This time, the goal is to establish a long-term presence on the moon as a stepping stone for future Mars missions. In